Every morning when the sun casts its first golden rays across quiet suburban streets, most of us wake to the smells of coffee, brewing, the bustle of children heading off to school, or the gentle hum of a neighbor's lawnmower. Invisible to these routines, however, lies a silent crisis touching the lives of millions of older Americans: elder abuse. It is a hidden epidemic, 1 in 10 seniors suffering some form of mistreatment at the hands of those they trust most. And yet, for every story we hear, countless others remain shrouded in shame, fear, or the misguided belief that family matters don't belong in public hands. Just last year in Illinois, the heartbreaking case of Anna Mae. He made national headlines. Anna Mae, an 82-year-old retired teacher, moved in with her daughter-in-law after a knee surgery. At first, her new home felt safe. Warm meals, soft blankets, and friendly smiles greeted her arrival. But behind closed doors, the daughter-in-law quietly siphoned off Anna Mae's life savings, falsifying bank statements and forging signatures on property deeds. Each small act of financial theft was disguised as helping with the bills, while cruel taunts about Anna Mae's age and frailty were passed off as concern for her well-being. By the time Anna Mae's children discovered the truth, their mother's nest egg was gone, and so was her faith in the people she loved. Stories like Anna Mae's are not rare. Across the United States, an estimated 5 million older adults are subjected annually to physical abuse, psychological torment, financial exploitation, or outright neglect. These are neighbors and friends who once tended community gardens, volunteered at local food banks, and shared wisdom gained over decades. Now many hide bruises beneath long sleeves or laugh off threats of eviction rather than admit to the terror they endure at home. The shame runs deep. How could the very people who promised to protect them become the source of pain? Recognizing the signs is the first step toward breaking the cycle. Physical indicators, bruises, bed sores, unexplained fractures are the most visible. Yet emotional scars often run deeper. You might notice a once vibrant grandparent growing unusually withdrawn, skipping family gatherings, or exhibiting sudden anxiety around relatives. Financial red flags include missing pension checks, unexplained ATM withdrawals, or sudden changes to wills and power of attorney documents. In many states, reasonable suspicion mandates that professionals, nurses, pharmacists, social workers report concerns to adult protective services. But far too often, well-meaning neighbors and even family members hesitate, worrying they might be wrong or that their intervention will do more harm than good. We all make mistakes when confronting such a delicate issue. A common trap is to chalk up suspicious behavior to harmless forgetfulness. Mum's just getting old, or he's always been a bit eccentric. Another pitfall is to overstep boundaries without the proper support, confronting an alleged abuser in a heated moment that ends in family rupture and leaves the victim more isolated than before. Worse still is doing nothing at all, allowing the abuse to escalate until a hospital stay or courtroom drama forces desperate action. Yet there are simple, compassionate steps each of us can take to protect the elders in our communities. Keep your eyes and ears open. If you notice your elderly neighbor's mailbox overflowing, or she appears frightened when her caregiver's name comes up gently, ask if everything is all right. A caring question can open a door faster than any formal report. Document what you observe. Jot down dates, times, and descriptions of concerning incidents, missed meals, forced chores, unexplained injuries. This log can become crucial evidence should authorities need details beyond a vague complaint. Reach out to trusted professionals. Call Adult Protective Services or your local elder care ombudsman. These agencies have teams trained to investigate discreetly, offering medical and legal assistance without shaming the victim. Offer practical support. Sometimes all an isolated senior needs is a friendly companion. Volunteer to pick up groceries, drive to doctor's appointments, or set up a regular check-in call. Your presence alone can deter would-be abusers. Empower through education. Many older adults are scammed out of their homes or savings by slick con artists posing as government agents or utility workers. Share information about common scams, tech support fraud, fake lottery wins, utility overpayment calls, and encourage them to verify any unexpected requests before handing over money or personal information. Take the case of Mr. Johnson, a World War II veteran living in a quiet Virginia suburb. When a man claiming to be from the Energy Commission called demanding an immediate $1,200 payment to avoid power disconnection, Mr. Johnson's daughter immediately smelled trouble. She sat with him, checked the official website on a separate phone, and discovered no such agency existed. Together they laughed off the threat, and Mr. Johnson gained confidence that he could handle similar calls in the future. Yet even armed with this knowledge, we must be careful not to let scams overshadow the fact that many abusers are not strangers, but family members or close friends. These golden charmers often wrap themselves in a cloak of affection, filling prescription pill boxes, chauffeuring to appointments, or managing menial tasks. The dynamic can shift subtly criticism, disguised as concern. You're too slow cutting the lawn. Financial control that begins with offering to handle checks, or emotional manipulation that isolates the senior from other loved ones. It's a cruel inversion. The very person who professes love and care gradually tightens the noose of dependency. Overcoming denial is perhaps the hardest battle. Love can blind us to cruelty, making us reluctant to accept a painful truth about someone we trust. That reluctance can give abusers the cover they need to continue their schemes. But denial is a luxury seniors cannot afford, and neither can we as a society. If you suspect abuse, remember that your hesitation might allow an 80-year-old neighbor to lose her home, her dignity, or worse. Legally, the United States has made strides through the Elder Justice Act and the formation of multidisciplinary teams across states. Federal funding now supports investigations, prosecutions, and victim services. Yet these laws are only as effective as the reports they generate. Without citizen vigilance, cases remain hidden. Consistent reporting not only helps a single individual, but also builds data to inform policymakers and fund critical social services. So what can we learn from this silent crisis? First, that elder abuse is not an isolated horror. It is woven into the fabric of families and communities. Second, that acknowledging the problem requires both courage and compassion. Third, that each of us in small ways can be an agent of change by asking a simple question, making a phone call, or just spending an afternoon sharing memories with an elder. Above all, we must remember that the older adults in our lives are not liabilities. They are repositories of history, wisdom, and resilience. They taught us to ride our first bikes, volunteered at our school carnivals, and stood by us when we needed counsel. Now, in their twilight years, they deserve our vigilance and care. Let us not allow them to become hidden victims behind closed doors or invisible figures in neighborhood peripheries. Instead, let us stand guard against the silent epidemic of elder abuse, ensuring that every grandparent, aunt, or family friend lives out their days with the dignity, security, and respect they so richly deserve. With this deeper understanding of elder abuse's reach and impact, we are ready to explore how to spot the golden charmer whose veneer of kindness can hide darker intentions, and learn the strategies that keep our elders safe from manipulation and exploitation. Every Sunday afternoon, Joan would greet her granddaughter at the door with a plate of freshly baked lemon bars, the warm scent drifting through the hallway. That kind of attention, treats, compliments, and gentle laughter might feel like the sweetest gesture in the world. But when it comes from someone with something to gain, it can be the first note of a dangerous melody, and the confluence of charm and deceit is what social workers call love bombing. Mrs. Kramer, a sprightly 78-year-old widow in Atlanta, thought she'd struck gold when her son's new wife, Angela, swept into her life with endless kindness. Angela offered to manage Mrs. Kramer's mail, arranged for her lawn to be mowed weekly, and insisted on chauffeuring her to every bridge club meeting. On paper, it was paradise until the phone calls started. At first, they were casual requests. "Mum, could you sign this quick financial form?" "It helps me file the joint taxes," Angela would say. Mrs. Kramer, touched by her daughter-in-law's apparent generosity, agreed without hesitation. When she noticed her savings account had dwindled by several $1,000s, Angela reassured her with a sympathetic nod. "Oh, don't worry. That's just the fees for the estate planning attorney I hired for Grandma's will." Only later did Mrs. Kramer learn that the lawyer in question didn't exist, and the checking account had been drained entirely. This kind of manipulation thrives on two classic tactics: the initial bombardment of affection, followed by gaslighting. After the financial shock, Angela blamed Mrs. Kramer's frailty and faulty memory. "You must be forgetting when we discussed it. You know how confusing these legal forms can be at your age." She'd coo her tone balanced to perfection between concern and condescension. The cruel irony of gaslighting is that it leaves the victim doubting her own judgment, exactly where the abuser wants her. It isn't only daughters-in-law who wield this golden charmer weapon. In Phoenix, the case of Mr. and Mrs. Rivera unfolded with eerily similar beats. A friendly neighbor, Marcus, began dropping by with freshly cut flowers and coffee from the best cafe in town. He'd chat about Mr. Rivera's health concerns, offering to drive him to the VA clinic, and he'd pick up prescriptions at the pharmacy on Mrs. Rivera's behalf. Before long, he'd somehow gained power of attorney over both their accounts. When their daughter noticed suspicious wire transfers to an unknown number, Marcus blamed bank errors and promised swift correction. By the time the truth surfaced, the couple's retirement fund had vanished, leaving no breadcrumbs for investigators. Financial crime among the elderly takes many shapes. But what sets these abuses apart from, say, an impersonal phishing scam is the intimate knowledge the abuser has of her victim's routines, vulnerabilities, and emotional weaknesses. Organized financial criminals might send thousands of phishing emails, hoping for one click. Our golden charmers only need one mark the person in their lives they've groomed with affection and feigned loyalty. Understanding this dynamic begins with recognizing the early warning signs: excessive gift-giving and flattery. Does someone shower your elderly loved one with gifts or praises that feel over the top? While kindness is wonderful, it can be a way to create psychological indebtedness. If the generosity comes bundled with requests like signing documents or granting access to accounts, that's a red flag. Isolation from frank voices. Whenever you, a close friend, or another family member express concern, the golden charmer subtly discredits you. They might say, "Oh, he's just confused, he barely remembers his own grandchildren," effectively isolating the senior from alternate viewpoints. Control of information flow. Does this person intercept mail, take calls meant for your loved one, or insist on being present at every medical appointment? Controlling information keeps the elder dependent and blinds others to potential abuse. Unexplained financial activity. Watch for transfers, withdrawals, or changes to wills that lack clear justification. Even small anomalies should prompt a conversation. "Mum, can we review this bank statement together before they balloon into catastrophic loss?" Emotional manipulation. Sentences like, "I do all this because I care more than anyone else," or, "You know I only have your best interests at heart," are hallmark phrases. The abuser casts herself as the sole path to comfort, eroding the elder's autonomy. Consider the story of Captain Richmond, an 85-year-old retired naval officer who lived alone in a seaside bungalow in San Diego. When he began receiving visits from a seemingly concerned real estate agent named Phyllis, he felt gratitude rather than suspicion. She offered free home valuations and advised him that his property value had doubled, if only he would help cover a small fee for marketing costs. Next came guidance on family trusts' legal fees and tax implications. By the time Captain Richmond's daughter flew in from Seattle and reviewed the paperwork, Phyllis had already transferred titles and wired funds overseas. A key mistake the Richmond family made was assuming that professional credentials implied integrity. They trusted the title agent enough to forgo verifying Phyllis's license or checking the Better Business Bureau. In the aftermath, they learned that legitimate professionals never pressure you for immediate sign-offs, and they always encourage you to seek second opinions from attorneys or financial advisors you trust. That realization prompted them and many others to recognize the savviest defense against golden charmers: empowerment through information. Here's how verify credentials independently. Before you sign anything, call the issuing board, Real Estate Commission, Bar Association, financial regulator to confirm licensure or certification. Seek a second opinion. If someone insists on handling your legal or financial affairs, ask for time to consult an independent professional you choose. Insist on transparency. Genuine helpers will welcome questions. If someone grows defensive when you ask for paperwork or references, that's a sign they may be following a script rather than exercising real concern. Keep family in the loop. Schedule monthly or quarterly family reviews of financial statements, wills, and power of attorney documents. High transparency builds communal oversight and makes covert manipulation far more difficult. Above all, don't underestimate the power of conversation. When Mrs. Kramer discovered her nest egg had vanished, she felt too embarrassed to tell her other children for weeks. In that silence, Angela solidified her hold. By contrast, when Captain Richmond's daughter insisted on a family dinner to discuss the suspicious documents, the abuser found it impossible to maintain her facade, and that confrontation set in motion the chain of legal actions that ultimately recovered most of his assets. Of course, confronting a golden charmer is never easy. Emotions run high, and in families, love and loyalty complicate every move. Here are some compassionate strategies for navigating that minefield. Use we statements instead of, "You did this, try." "We've noticed some changes in your finances. Can we all look together that inclusivity can reduce defensiveness?" Frame it as concern, not accusation. Lead with care. "I know how much you value your privacy and independence. Can we set aside an hour to review these documents so you can feel fully confident about your plans?" Set boundaries early. If someone newly in your loved one's life begins asking for keys, passwords, or signatures, gently reply, "Let's loop in Grandpa's attorney to make sure we're all protected." Offer alternatives. If the abuser insists on handling a task, propose a joint solution. "I'm so glad you're helping with Mum's grocery shopping. How about I join you next time so I can learn her dietary preferences?" This subtly shifts power back to the family network. At the heart of these stories is a universal truth. Elders don't ask to be deceived. They are often the most trusting people, believing in the goodness of others, because that has served them well for most of their lives. When that trust becomes currency for financial predators, the wounds cut deepest. But trust restored through a transparent family dialogue, a supportive community, and the vigilance of professionals can rebuild what was lost. In the next section, we'll explore concrete step-by-step methods for gathering and safeguarding evidence of elder abuse, so that when warning signs appear, families can move quickly, effectively, and compassionately to protect the people they love. When Mrs. Delgado's neighbor, Linda, noticed a fresh bruise peeking through the cuff of her sweater. She felt a knot in her stomach. Just 2 weeks earlier, she'd helped Mrs. Delgado hang family photos on the living room wall. The woman's soft laugh and sparkling eyes had made the task feel like a treat. Now, watching her shuffle toward the bedroom in obvious discomfort, Linda knew it was time to do more than offer sympathy. That evening, when Mrs. Delgado fell asleep in her favorite armchair, Linda eased out her smartphone and gently whispered, "I'm going to help us make sure nothing is hidden." It felt strange, like snooping, but she reminded herself that gathering proof might be the only way to stop what was happening behind closed doors. Over the next hour, Linda moved quietly through the apartment, placing small battery-powered cameras on high shelves and discreet corners, one in the kitchen, hidden behind a ceramic herb pot, another in the hallway mounted above the coat rack, and a third in the dining area tucked into a photo frame. Each camera boasted motion sensor activation and silent recording so nothing would escape its lens. At the same time, Linda activated a voice recorder app on her own phone. In many states, over 38 of them, recording conversations you're part of is perfectly legal as long as one party consents. In this case, Linda herself. She tested the app with a low cough, ensuring it picked up even the faintest whisper. Then she labeled the file Kitchen July 12, 10 p.m., and tapped a quick note in her phone's notepad. Bruise seen July 11th. Morning Vera says she fell, but story doesn't fit. These simple metadata date, time, brief context would be vital if a social worker or detective ever needed an exact timeline. Over the next several days, the cameras and recorder captured painful scenes. Mr. Delgado ranting at his mother for trivial mistakes, the dirty look when she forgot to lock the front door, and the clatter of objects thrown in anger. Late one night, Linda clicked through the footage and found the moment that broke her heart. Mrs. Delgado on her knees scrubbing the bathroom floor under a harsh lamp, just minutes before her son strode in and snapped, "Why is this still dirty?" The microphone had caught the sharp kick of a bucket that sent soapy water spraying across the tile. Mrs. Delgado's stumbling apology, her voice quivering, echoed clear as day. Linda felt tears sting her eyes. Any doubt about whether something was seriously wrong vanished in an instant. But recording is only half the battle. Linda knew that courts and protective services would need unaltered proof. She made 2 exact copies of the micro SD cards, labeled them plastic sleeves, and stored one set in her own safe at home and another in her locked filing cabinet at her office. She even carried a third copy on a secure cloud drive encrypted with a strong password she shared only with Mrs. Delgado's attorney. Never rely on a single source, she told herself. Evidence can disappear or be tampered with, and we need backups. A week later, armed with the recordings, Linda reached out to the county's Adult Protective Services. The APS caseworker, Maria, listened intently as Linda described what she'd documented. Maria outlined the agency's privacy guidelines. Because Mrs. Delgado lived in a private residence, they needed to balance the right to monitor abuse with the principle of reasonable expectation of privacy. Cameras in common areas, and for strictly abuse-related purposes, were generally acceptable, but recording in bathrooms or bedrooms without explicit consent could create legal complications. Having stuck to the kitchen, hallway, and dining room, Linda had followed best practice, and Maria's voice softened as she said, "This is exactly the kind of thorough, respectful approach that helps us help her safely." During their meeting, Maria also explained how to create a written incident log. Mrs. Delgado herself would sit down with a notepad and pen, under Maria's gentle guidance, and note date time. What happened? Any injuries and names of any witnesses. Combining Mrs. Delgado's first-hand account with the camera footage created a robust chain of custody that detectives and judges could rely on. Even little details matter, Maria emphasized. If we have three separate sources, video, audio, and a written narrative, it becomes nearly impossible for an abuser to claim, "I was never there," or "that never happened." Linda watched with relief as APS arranged an urgent welfare check. A nurse and a social worker arrived unannounced the next morning, gently examining Mrs. Delgado's bruises and offering her medical care. Because the recordings contained clear timestamps, the nurse could correlate the swelling and discoloration with the exact moment of the bucket kick. A physician's report documented the injuries, and Maria filed a formal abuse complaint. Within 48 hours, the court granted a protective order requiring Mr. Delgado to move out temporarily and ordered him to attend counseling before any supervised visitation. Of course, families often stumble at these crucial steps. One common mistake is failing to label or timestamp recordings. Without clear markers, a judge might doubt whether a clip truly reflects the incident date. Another pitfall is storing all evidence in one place. If that box is lost in a fire or deleted by an angry relative, months of documentation vanish. Yet another error is uploading files to an unsecured cloud folder where hackers or nosy neighbors could tamper with them. By contrast, Linda's method of multiple backups, physical and digital, encrypted and locked, provided a safety net. Perhaps the most overlooked misstep is not involving the elder in the process. Too often, well-meaning friends or volunteers secretly place cameras without explaining to the person most affected. That can feel like an invasion of privacy, triggering anxiety or anger when the elder discovers the setup. Instead, Maria advised that all such measures be discussed with Mrs. Delgado first, emphasizing that these steps weren't about spying, but about ensuring her safety. When Mrs. Delgado learned that Linda would share footage only with licensed professionals committed to her well-being, she nodded gratefully and agreed to participate in the documentation, even helping to adjust one camera toward the front entrance. By the time the APS investigation concluded, Mrs. Delgado had regained a measure of peace, and her little apartment felt like home again. Mr. Delgado, having completed anger management classes and a regret-intensive therapy program, was allowed supervised visits. The cameras were removed, and Mrs. Delgado now chose to keep a small security system installed at her front door, one with her consent and no hidden microphones. Empowered by the process, she began volunteering at the local senior center, helping others understand their rights. As Linda reflected on the journey, she realized that gathering evidence was more than a technical exercise. It was an act of love and solidarity. Each camera placed each audio clip, labeled each safe deposit of a micro SD card. Said, "I believe you. You are not alone." In a world where elder abuse often hides behind closed doors and polite smiles, that tangible proof can be a lifeline. Next, we'll explore the legal pathways and the network of support systems available to families in the United States, so that when warning signs appear, you'll know exactly where to turn for help, compassion, and justice. When Mr. Thompson's daughter Laura saw the court papers sitting on the kitchen table, her heart skipped a beat. She knew this moment would come, but nothing could fully prepare her for the weight of holding an official complaint in her hands. Just weeks earlier, her 82-year-old father had moved back into the family home after a fall at his apartment complex. The arrangement seemed ideal. Laura's schedule as a school counselor aligned perfectly with tending to his physical therapy appointments. But soon, subtle changes revealed themselves: missed medication doses, unexplained bruises, and the uneasy way Mr. Thompson winced whenever his live-in aide, Carlos, helped him stand. One evening, after finding her father shaking with tears in his bedroom, Laura contacted Adult Protective Services APS for the first time. The voice on the other end belonged to a caseworker named Jasmine, whose calm, reassuring tone instantly put Laura at ease. "You did the right thing calling us," Jasmine said. Our job is to investigate discreetly, and if there's a risk, to act swiftly. Step 1. The initial report. Within 48 hours of Laura's call, an APS investigator arrived unannounced at the Thompson residence. It was not a dramatic raid, rather a gentle knock and a clear introduction. "I'm here to see how Mr. Thompson is doing." Over the next 2 days, Jasmine's team conducted interviews with Mr. Thompson, Laura, and even Carlos, all while observing interactions in common areas of the house. This balanced approach, treating each person with respect, helped APS gather the information they needed without traumatizing anyone involved. Step 2. Coordinating with law enforcement. As APS documented evidence of neglect, missed lunches, ignored calls for help, they realized Carlos might also be taking small amounts of cash. Because financial exploitation falls under both civil and criminal statutes, Jasmine worked alongside the local sheriff's elder abuse unit to prepare a joint referral. Within a week, an officer showed up with subpoenas for bank records and took a formal statement from Mr. Thompson about missing checks. The key takeaway here was collaboration. APS protected the senior's safety and well-being, while law enforcement pursued any criminal aspects. Step 3. Seeking court intervention. With compelling evidence in hand, APS reports police affidavits, medical records documenting untreated bed sores. Laura and Jasmine arranged for an emergency hearing in the local probate court. A judge reviewed the packet and in less than 48 hours issued a temporary restraining order TRO against Carlos, forbidding him from contacting or coming within 100 yards of Mr. Thompson. Simultaneously, the court appointed a guardian ad litem to represent Mr. Thompson's best interests, ensuring his voice would be heard, even if his cognition faltered. Step 4. Guardianship and financial oversight. Probate judges have broad authority to impose different levels of guardianship, ranging from full control over personal and financial matters to limited approval over specific transactions. Laura, wanting to preserve her father's independence whenever possible, requested a limited conservatorship over his finances. This meant Mr. Thompson could still manage daily expenses under Laura's oversight, but large withdrawals or property transfers would require mutual approval. The court approved her petition, empowering Laura to place a hold on his bank accounts, stop any questionable payments, and work with a certified public accountant to bring his finances back into order. Step 5. Legal remedies for financial exploitation. It turned out Carlos had siphoned nearly $15,000 into gift cards and personal wire transfers. Jasmine guided Laura to California's Victim Compensation Board, which helps seniors recover costs related to healthcare and lost funds in abuse cases, and referred her to a local non-profit elder law clinic for pro bono assistance in civil recovery suits against Carlos. With the elder law attorney's help, Laura filed a civil claim in small claims court for restitution. Within 3 months, under the threat of a default judgment, Carlos agreed to a settlement payment plan. Alongside these legal measures, Jasmine connected Laura to the National Adult Protective Services Association, NAPSA, and the Elder Care Locator, a free federal service that provides local resources for counseling advocacy and in-home support. These connections proved invaluable when Mr. Thompson's mobility worsened and he needed in-home nursing visits and meal deliveries to remain safe and healthy at home. Many families delay reporting, fearing family rifts or doubting whether the signs are severe enough. Others rush into court unprepared, only to have protective orders dismissed due to incomplete paperwork or hearsay testimony. Laura's success hinged on 3 crucial steps: careful documentation, professional collaboration, and knowing her legal options. Document everything. Photos of injuries, copies of medical bills, a detailed timeline. Enlist APS or a trusted elder law attorney early so investigations and legal filings build on solid expertise. Finally, understand the spectrum of guardianship and restraining orders. Sometimes a limited intervention preserves dignity better than full guardianship. With legal remedies in place, Laura turned her attention to long-term support for her father. She enrolled him in a local wellness program funded by the Older Americans Act, which offers congregate meals and social activities tailored to seniors. On weekdays, a volunteer from the RSVP, Retired Senior Volunteer Program, checked in with Mr. Thompson for companionship and minor household tasks, reducing the risk that another predatory aide might slip through. The family also discovered that Medicaid's Home and Community-Based Services (HCBS) waiver could cover the costs of in-home aides, removing the need to hire private caregivers. Laura worked with a social worker at the county public health department to complete the application, ensuring her father's needs were met without straining their finances. Throughout the process, one theme emerged. It takes a village to protect a vulnerable elder. Laura relied on APS for investigation law enforcement for criminal referrals, the probate court for protective orders, an elder law clinic for restitution, and community agencies for ongoing care. Each organization played its part, but communication between them, prompted by Laura's persistence, was what wove these threads into a safety net under her father. Families who worry about legal fees can turn to legal aid societies, local bar associations, pro bono panels, and law school clinics. In California, for example, the state bar's Senior Citizens Legal Services program offers free advice and referrals statewide, while Chicago's Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under the law runs an elder justice initiative. The pattern repeats in major cities and rural counties alike, dedicated attorneys and paralegals willing to take on elder abuse cases at no cost, ensuring that north of 1 million seniors who live in poverty aren't left defenseless. The Elder Justice Act, first passed in 2010, authorized grants to improve adult protective services, expand forensic centers to analyze abuse evidence, and provide training for prosecutors and investigators. Combined with the Older Americans Act, it created a federal framework that funds state and local programs, meaning that even in remote communities, staff can draw on federal expertise and funding. Yet these resources only activate when someone asks for help. By the time Mr. Thompson's finances were secured, his home environment made safe, and his physical health stabilized, Laura realized how much the journey had taught her about resilience and community. In the kitchen one afternoon, she found her father smiling as he made pancakes for his new volunteer aide, Maria, who dropped by with herbs from her garden. "I can't believe how blessed I am," he said, flipping a golden pancake. Laura knew the real blessing was not luck, but people choosing to step forward. APS caseworkers, officers, judges, attorneys, volunteers, so that an elderly man who once felt helpless again felt at home. And that is the promise of America's Elder Protection Network. When we combine compassion with law, resources with resolve, every senior has a chance to live with dignity, security, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing help is never far away. Sunday mornings in the park took on a new warmth for Mr. Thompson Subcompuzine. Once hesitant to leave his home after the ordeal with Carlos, he now strolled along the paved paths with his grand dog Daisy, stopping to chat with neighbors and share a laugh. Behind every friendly greeting lay a network of support that had grown around him, proof that healing isn't just about fixing paperwork or medical bills, it's about belonging again. When the protective orders lifted and the guardianship transitioned back to Mr. Thompson's full control, Laura worried he might feel adrift. But she had a plan. First, she helped him apply for the Medicaid Home and Community-Based Services waiver, which covered cleaning, meal deliveries, and twice-weekly nursing check-ins. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson's world included a rotating cast of friendly helpers, Rosa, the home health aide, who brought fresh lilies, and Tom from Meals on Wheels, who stayed to chat about the latest baseball scores. Next, Laura connected him with the local chapter of the Retired Senior Volunteer Program, RSVP. Every Thursday morning, he drove Rosa's van down to the community centre and spent an hour mentoring at-risk youth. Watching him patiently explain algebra formulas to teenagers reminded everyone that vulnerability can coexist with purpose. He once told Laura, "These kids look at me like I have something worth sharing. That's better medicine than any pill." Across town, neighbours had rallied even more. Mrs. Kim, the deli owner who'd delivered sandwiches when Mr. Thompson was recovering, organised a monthly potluck senior social. The first one drew 15 people. Some had no family nearby. Others were like Mrs. Delgado survivors of their own abuse stories. They swapped recipes, crossword tips, and supportive nods over pot roast and coleslaw. One attendee, Mr. Allen, quietly mentioned that hearing Mr. Thompson speak about regaining his life gave him the courage to finally report his son's financial theft. In that moment, the senior social became a safe harbour for countless whispered confessions and phoenix-like comebacks. But individual programs are only part of the solution. Recognizing this, Laura reached out to her employer, a regional school district, and proposed an elder care flex policy. She'd read about companies in Chicago allowing employees 2 half-days a month to care for an aging relative classified under a compassionate leave category. Paired with flexible scheduling, the policy ensured that caregivers wouldn't have to choose between their jobs and their loved ones' safety. After Laura presented data showing reduced burnout and higher morale in pilot schools, the district board approved the change district-wide. Within weeks, several teachers quietly thanked Laura, admitting they'd been struggling to juggle early morning dialysis appointments for spouses or midday doctor visits for their parents. Meanwhile, the local branch of AARP had launched Project Secure, an initiative to install simple door alarms and bright hallway lighting in seniors' homes, reducing falls and unwanted visits. Mr. Thompson volunteered to host the pilot installation in his house, describing the process in a short video. "I felt trapped in here before. Now I feel protected." The video went viral on the city's Facebook group, prompting dozens of calls from seniors eager to sign up. Soon, the county allocated funds to expand Project Secure into neighbouring counties. Yet recovery is never entirely smooth. One common pitfall happens when officials assume that once paperwork is signed, the danger has passed. In Mr. Thompson's case, there was a scare when a new caregiver hired through a temp agency arrived with vague credentials. Laura, busier now with her new compassionate leave duties, had initially trusted the agency's vetting process. It wasn't until she found a utility bill for the aide's name, addressed to a different state, that alarm bells rang. She contacted APS again, and the aide was immediately replaced. Reflecting on the scare, Laura realized the lesson vigilance must continue even after a crisis seems to have passed. Another misstep families make is underestimating the power of financial literacy. After recovering Carlos's misappropriated funds, Laura sat down with Mr. Thompson and an elder law attorney to review his accounts and discuss simple budgeting tools. They set up dual notification alerts on his checking account. If any transaction over $100 occurred, both Laura and her father would receive texts. They also consolidated his investment statements into a single monthly summary, eliminating the confusion that once allowed fraud to slip through. Empowerment, they learned, is as much about knowledge as it is about technology. Beyond individual households, the story of Mr. Thompson inspired local policymakers. The county supervisor, watching the success of Project Secure and the district's elder care flex policy, commissioned a task force to draft a comprehensive, age-friendly community resolution. Over 6 months, stakeholders from senior center volunteers to investment advisors drafted recommendations on accessible public transportation, universal design standards for new housing, and incentives for elder-friendly businesses. When the county board passed the resolution unanimously, Mr. Thompson and Laura were invited to speak at the ceremony. Standing at the podium, Mr. Thompson's voice quivered only once when he thanked everyone for giving him back his independence. On a broader scale, these local efforts connect to federal legislation, like the Older Americans Act and the Elder Justice Act, both of which provide funding for adult protective services, research, and training. But laws don't enforce themselves, communities do. Cities around the country are now modeling their own age-friendly plans after hours, and Laura receives weekly emails from strangers in Texas and Ohio asking for advice. She always replies the same way. Start small, a potluck, a policy change at work, a weekly check-in call. Those first steps can change lives. One warm afternoon, as Mr. Thompson and Laura sat on the porch, admiring Daisy, chasing butterflies, Laura looked at her father and said, "We built more than a safety net, Dad. We built a home." He nodded, watching the breeze rustle the roses she'd replanted after the eviction scare. And this community, he added, kept us safe long after the court orders expired. Their journey reveals a simple truth. Recovery flourishes when we weave care into the fabric of daily life through laws that support caregiving neighborhoods that watch out for one another, workplaces that respect family responsibilities, and programs that restore dignity with a potluck invitation or a friendly volunteer's visit. It's a mosaic of small acts, each one reinforcing the others, that transforms vulnerability into resilience. If there is one message in Mr. Thompson's story, it's this. Elder abuse thrives in isolation and fear, but it withers in the light of community and policy. Whether you're a neighbor who offers to trim someone's hedges, an employer drafting a compassionate leave policy, or a volunteer teaching digital literacy, you hold a piece of that mosaic. And when those pieces come together, every senior can live out their golden years with the dignity, security, and joy they deserve.